Today in Miss Nelson's class, I have a special treat. We're going to listen to a story that might remind you of me. Now sit back and remember to behave while you listen to the story Miss Nelson is missing. Once upon a time, my students in classroom 207, they lost all control. They just wouldn't behave at all. I begged and I pleaded, please settle down. But spitballs and paper airplanes, they flew all around. They made faces and they giggled at me. They even refused to listen and behave during our story time. Well, I'll tell you what, I had enough. I made a promise my teaching days were done. The very next day, I did not return to school. My students were excited and screamed, "No teacher today, let's act our very worst." Well, just as they had begun their worst behavior of all, their new teacher stood before them and said so unpleasantly, "Ha! Not so fast." The students looked to the front of the classroom and saw the ugliest switch instead of me. The new teacher introduced herself. "My name is Miss Viola Swamp, and I'm your new teacher." The students were startled and asked where I was, but Miss Viola Swamp ignored them and cackled her orders. "Where's your homework and do your math? No talking, no story time, and I hope you like homework because there's plenty of that." Well, my students behaved the best they ever had, but the days went by and I still had not returned to school. My students became worried and tried to figure out what to do. They decided they had to go to the police. Surely Detective McSmog would know what to do. But Detective McSmog had no idea where I was. So with no answers and nowhere to go, they decided to look at my house. Well, at my house there was no signs of me either. So my students raced back to room 207 before Miss Viola Swamp knew they were missing. While waiting for Miss Viola Swamp, they decided to brainstorm some ideas of what could have happened to me. Maybe Miss Nelson got gobbled up by a shark. Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars. But they knew those ideas were just a little too silly to be true. So they came to the conclusion that they were stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard stomping coming. Heels. Maybe it was Miss Viola Swamp. They got closer and closer. So my students put on their best behavior. But ever so suddenly, and to their surprise, a sweet voice filled the room. "Hello, children." And with tears and excitement, my students cried, "Oh, Miss Nelson, we've missed you. Where have you been?" Ever so sweetly, I replied, "That'll be my little secret. But for now, let's get ready for story time. And maybe tonight, I won't assign any homework." And for the rest of the day, my students were on their best behavior. I knew something had changed. So I asked them, "Why are you all so well behaved?" And they chuckled a little and said, "Miss Nelson, we have our secrets too." I went home so impressed with how well they behaved. I settled in for the night and placed my jacket right next to an old witch costume, convinced that my students would never know the truth. I was so proud of how far they had come, even if they'd never know that Miss Viola Swamp was always only one costume away. Oh, and if you wondered about what happened to Detective Smog, well, he's got a new case. He's looking for Miss Viola Swamp.